In the first quarter of 2026, Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics released a single number that should have stopped every policymaker in their tracks. Manufacturing tax payments, the lifeblood of the nation's productive economy, collapsed by 31%, year on year. From 107.9 billion naira in Q1 2025 to just 74.48 billion naira in Q1 2026. That is not a statistical blip. That is a warning siren. This is the Alliance for Economic Research and Ethics. And this is what the data is telling us.
Let us look at the 4 numbers that define this crisis. First, 74.48 billion naira. That is what Nigeria's manufacturers paid in company income tax in Q1 2026. Second, negative 31%. That is the year-on-year decline compared to the same quarter in 2025. Third, negative 47.49%. That is the quarter-on-quarter collapse from Q4 2025 to Q1 2026 alone. And fourth, 1.37 trillion naira. That is the total company income tax collected across all sectors in Q1 2026. Manufacturing's share of that total? Just 13.82%. A sector that once drove this economy now contributes barely 1 naira in every 7.
The quarterly chart tells an even more alarming story. In Q2 of 2025, manufacturers paid 360 billion naira in corporate income tax, the highest quarterly figure in recent memory. By Q3 2025, that had fallen to 271 billion. By Q4 2025, 141 billion. And by Q1 2026, it had plunged to just 74 billion naira. That is a 79% fall in just 3 quarters. Not a gradual decline, a free fall. Who is actually paying Nigeria's corporate taxes? Financial and insurance companies lead, contributing 24.73% of total CIT. Mining and quarrying follows at 16.06%. Manufacturing, the sector that employs the most workers, that transforms raw materials into finished goods, that holds the greatest potential for industrialization, contributes just 13.82%. This is the structural warning buried inside the headline number. Nigeria's tax base is shifting away from production and toward extraction and finance. That is the profile of a rentier economy, not an industrializing one. Here lies the cruel paradox. Nigeria's 2026 tax reforms were designed as a manufacturing lifeline. The corporate tax rate is being reduced from 30% to 25%. Manufacturers with turnover below 100 million naira are now fully exempt from company income tax. Input VAT recovery has been broadened, and a new economic development incentive offers 5% annual tax credits on capital investment. So why, with all these reforms in place, did manufacturing tax payments collapse by 31%? 3 explanations demand attention. First, Profitability has eroded faster than tax rates fell. A rate cut cannot explain a 31% revenue drop. Manufacturers are paying less because there is less profit to tax. Second, the reform transition created a compliance vacuum. Firms facing a completely new tax architecture delayed remittances, restructured accounting periods, and waited for clarity from the Nigeria Revenue Service. Third, the 100 million naira exemption threshold may have pulled thousands of medium-sized manufacturers entirely out of the tax net. Base erosion disguised as relief.
The implications of this collapse extend far beyond a spreadsheet. Fiscal vulnerability. At a time when Nigeria is borrowing to fund public services, losing manufacturing tax revenue compounds an already fragile fiscal position. Employment destruction. Manufacturing is one of Nigeria's most labor-intensive formal sectors. Falling profitability means hiring freezes, reduced hours, and the informalization of once formal jobs. Currency pressure. When domestic manufacturing weakens, Nigeria imports what it once produced. This widens the trade deficit and puts further pressure on the Naira. Structural regression. Nigeria's tax base is shifting from manufacturing toward financial services and raw commodity extraction. This is not the direction of industrialization. And sovereign credit risk. International rating agencies watch manufacturing health as a proxy for economic resilience. A collapsing productive sector raises borrowing costs for the entire nation. This is not an accounting footnote. This is a 5-alarm fire. But here is the crucial nuance that this chart reveals. Manufacturing VAT, the tax on goods sold, remained strong at 329.59 billion naira in Q1 2026. Manufacturing CIT, the tax on profits, collapsed to just 74.48 billion. What does this divergence tell us? Factories are still producing. They are still selling, but their profit margins have been crushed. The productive engine of Nigeria is running, but running on empty. The Alliance for Economic Research and Ethics calls for 6 urgent, evidence-based interventions. 1. An emergency manufacturing sector audit. Commission an independent forensic review to determine exactly how much of this decline reflects genuine profit erosion versus compliance delays versus strategic base erosion. Without accurate diagnosis, no cure is possible. 2. A targeted energy subsidy for manufacturers. Energy costs are the primary killer of manufacturing margins. Redirect fiscal savings into subsidized gas-to-power and renewable energy tax credits. 3. De-risk manufacturing credit. High interest rates are a tax on industrial ambition. A manufacturing credit guarantee scheme backed by federal risk-sharing must be established immediately. 4. Reform implementation stabilization. Issue immediate guidance from the Nigeria Revenue Service on transitional CIT treatment. Uncertainty kills compliance faster than any tax rate. 5. Protect the tax base. Introduce anti-fragmentation laws to prevent gaming of the 100 million naira threshold. Graduated relief, not cliff-edge exemptions. 6. A cabinet-level manufacturing revival plan. Zero-duty equipment imports, fast-tracked regulatory approvals, special economic zones with guaranteed infrastructure, not just tax holidays.
The 2026 tax reforms are structurally sound in design. But design without implementation is delusion. Manufacturing is not merely a sector,
It is the bridge between raw poverty and shared prosperity. When that bridge weakens by 31% in a single year, the entire economy trembles. The Alliance for Economic Research and Ethics calls on the federal government, the National Assembly, and the Nigeria Revenue Service to treat this data not as a statistical anomaly, but as a national emergency. We must rebuild Nigeria's productive sector, or watch the nation slide into a commodity-dependent, jobless, import-addicted future. The choice is ours. The time is now.